You got your recorder ready?
I do. It's even on.
And good evening. Please be aware that the first hour and a half of this meeting will be recorded so that we can put it onto our website, our podcast, and our YouTube channel. We record in audio only. Feel free to use the podcast on our website along with your big book as a resource if you missed the study portion of the meeting. The study portion is also listed on the website so you can follow along. Tonight's recap will start on page 5, where starting out with renewing my resolve, and end on page 8 with the words, alcohol was my master. And our study tonight will start on page 8 right after that, trembling I stepped from the hospital, and end on page 10 for I was hopeless. And are there any announcements?
There are. Good evening, family. My name is Jamie Berry, grateful recovered alcoholic. It's so good to be with all of you and have all of you here tonight. Couple of things. First, we finally put the letter together for GSO that was approved by our group Conscience to send to GSO of why we have withheld funds for the last couple of years. There have been 23 copies of it made, and it was sent to the general manager of AAWS to be distributed to the trustees. And we are but only one group, but they may not pay any attention to our reasonings for why. But hopefully there are some other groups that have done the same thing, and it's all in the spirit of GSO being more transparent with the body of Alcoholics Anonymous. Second thing, our District 40 picnic is this weekend, and some of you live in Tennessee. You're welcome to come join us in Lppbbsg at the Rec Center, and if not, we're going to Zoom the speaker portion of it, probably about 1:15, 1:30 Central Time, and the information will be put in the chat. It will be zoomed in this particular room, so you're welcome to come join us for that. I know the speaker very well. That's all I'm going to say about it. So, and good evening, family. Again, my name is Jamie, very grateful recovered alcoholic, and welcome to the Lppbbsg Primary Purpose Big Book Study Group. To prepare for our Big Book study, let's get focused by having a 3-minute moment of meditation, followed by our family's fog light prayer.
And I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name is Trish. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're going to start the meditation in a minute, so please take a moment to get situated.
Please be aware of background noises when you are unmuted and sharing, as to not distract others or maybe even yourself. We suggest we all observe proper Zoom etiquette. If you wouldn't do it in a live meeting, please don't do it here. And just a friendly reminder that absence of profanity offends no one. Please keep yourself muted during someone else's share, and we will call on you in the order that hands are raised.
From the foreword to the first edition of Alcoholics Anonymous. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are many thousands of men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book and of this group.
For the meditation, some suggestions are: focus on your breath and posture, breathe in God and breathe out self.
Take this time to reconnect with God. Let the craziness of the day drift away and ask God to help you focus on the study.
And let's bring in our adorable little monks to do what they do so well. Enjoy your time with God, folks, and we'll see you in a couple of minutes. And you should see our family's Foglight Prayer on your screen in front of you if you'd like to join us. Foglight Prayer. God, let your love shine through us like a foglight, so that those that are lost, sick, and dying can find your love through us. Amen.
And let's have our secretary's report. Come on in, Gandalf.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Donald, aka Gandalf the Red Pickle Alcoholic. Grateful to be an alcoholic because I'm recovered but not cured. And this is your recovered alcoholic secretary's report. And I've asked Mr. Larry to read the recovery statement. We read this to explain why many people in this group identify as recovered rather than recovering, and what it exactly means to be a recovered alcoholic. Take it away, Larry.
Yes, I'm Larry, and I am a recovered alcoholic. Recovered. We are not cured of alcoholism. Recovered, but not cured. That presents a conflict to some alcoholics. If we were cured, we would be able to drink responsibly. No, we're not cured. The allergic reaction to alcohol will remain with us for a lifetime. But we have been restored to sanity. That was the problem. The main problem of alcoholic centers in his mind rather than his body. Page 23. We are now sane where alcohol is concerned. Consequently, we have recovered.
Well, thank you, Mr. Larry. And thank you all for joining us this evening. We meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Central Time with the Gerbil. Oh, hold on a second. I gotta make this bigger. There we go. We meet with the Gerbil Fellowship Cage, where we chatter for about an hour before the start of the meeting. Feel free to bring side dishes to share with the buzzards. Our big book starts promptly at 6:30 Central Time, and we ask that you be courteous and ready to begin at the sound of the foghorn. We take our big book study seriously, and because of that, chat will be disabled during the study. In the 1940s, when the only elements to sobriety were God, a big book, and one recovered alcoholic working with an untreated alcoholic, and the success rate was as follows. From the forward to the second edition of Alcoholics Anonymous, page XX, try. 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% sobered up after some relapse. And the remainder, those who stayed on with AA, showed improvement. Can we have a show of hands of all the people joining us for the first time today?
I don't think we have any tonight. You
Woo!
guys are
We
becoming
got-
regulars.
We got family in the house. All right. And then all the recovered alcoholics. Hey, look at that. Look at all those smiling faces. Okay, is anybody celebrating a milestone or birthday this month or this week? Oh, Shayna, come on in.
Alyssa.
Alyssa.
Hi, my name's Alyssa. I'm a recovered alcoholic. On Thursday the 18th, I will have 4 years of sobriety.
Yay!
Hi,
Yay.
congratulations.
Well,
Okay.
come back
You
next
get-
week and we'll throw that chip up for you.
Yeah, and we might even give you one of these. Okay, well, congratulations. If you should require a big book of your own, we have large print editions available that can be sent to you by buzzard mail. Delivery time is questionable. And please remember to practice our 7th tradition by donating to the group address, Venmo, or PayPal posted in chat and on the screen. Our suggestion is to take is to purchase a big book and take an untreated alcoholic through the program of recovery. And don't forget, please visit our website, posted in chat. Thank you very much, and we will see you next week.
Thank you for your service, Donald, and you as well, Larry. Glad to have you tonight. From Chapter 2, there is a solution. The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism.
This is an open meeting, and as such, all who have an interest in alcoholism and our program of recovery are welcome. Because this is an open meeting, you need not identify yourself nor your reason for being here if you do not wish to do so. Your anonymity will be protected. We ask that you protect ours.
While this is an open meeting, membership in this group is limited to those who wish to recover from alcoholism and have a desire to stop drinking for good and all. Each member of Alcoholics Anonymous is a potential sponsor of a new member and should clearly recognize the obligations and duties of such a responsibility.
Before we begin our study of the Big Book, last week we reviewed Tradition 9. Tonight, let's take a quick look at Tradition 10. And please refer to page 562 of our book, Alcoholics Anonymous. Come on in, Kenny.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Kenny. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Tradition 10. Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues. Hence, the AA name will never be drawn into public controversy. That's the short form. The long form says a little bit more. No AA group or member should ever in such a way be implicated. I have to implicate AA, express any opinion on outside controversial issues, particularly those of politics, alcoholic reform, sectarian religion. The Alcoholics Anonymous group opposes no one. Concerning such matters, they can express no views whatsoever. I've read and talked to several people, and they are all told. We all heard of the Washingtonian, a movement that was over 100 years ago that was started by alcoholics, and how they grew and how their movement fell. And their movement fell basically because they started getting into other things. They started first with abolition, then they started getting into alcoholic reform, and and they got away from what they did best, help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. So they fell apart. AA that I've been going to, I never seen any the members argue over it, politics, what Trump is doing, what this one is doing. It just has no place in our meeting. You know, we concentrate on what we do best, and as a result, AA remains effective at helping other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. We don't get into what the government is doing, what the religious people is doing, or any of them petty squabbles. You know, it's not saying that we're peaceful and everything, but we focus on what we do best. And that's all I have to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. Great job. Thank you for being of service tonight. And we look forward to hearing from you for next week for Tradition 11. And now it's time for our weekly installment of That Ain't in the Book. We hear a lot of stuff said in meetings that can't be reconciled with the program as described in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. One of those things we often hear is, there are no musts in the program. So Lisa is going to come in and tell us what it has to say on on page 93 in the third paragraph. Welcome, Lisa. Good to have you tonight. And you're muted, hon.
Hi everyone, I'm Lisa. I'm an alcoholic. To be vital, faith must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish constructive action.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
As we study, please make use of the pens, highlighters, and rulers so that you can share this experience with another alcoholic.
In order for us to stay focused, we use the Big Book study guide that is prepared by Joe and Charlie and Krusty Cliff of the Dallas Primary Purpose Group.
Tonight we're going to start our recap on page 5, which will be read tonight by Susan. That will be followed by our study portion, which will be read by Donald.
After the page is read, we will ask questions from the imaginary podium, starting back on where our study portion was read tonight by Donald. The answers will be one-sentence answer coming directly out of your Big Book, unless otherwise specified, and one-sentence answers are simply multi-part questions are simply divided up by commas. Boy, one sentence, let me try that again. Multi-part questions are simply a one-sentence answer split up by commas, semicolons, hyphens, and other fun bits of punctuation. My brain was thinking ahead of where I was reading.
Basically, in English, what that means is we're going to read the material once through and then dissect the information a second time through the question and answer format. Notice how the language in the questions gives us a new light in which to consider the study material.
This is important because hearing the question and rereading the content offers a definite way of comprehending the material covered. After we've completed the study, we open up for comment, questions, observations based on what was just read. And if you've had a spiritual experience with this information, please feel free to share. Keep your share on topic and under 5 minutes. At the 5-minute mark, you will hear a timer beep to let you know that it is time to pass it to the next person.
However, Big Book study is not therapy. Should you begin sharing on topics which are more appropriately discussed in a different setting, for example, with your sponsor, please do not be offended when we cut that conversation short and send the buzzards nipping at your heels. For that purpose, we have fellowship meetings before and after our study time.
You can never go wrong by commenting on the pages studied, which brings us to the words of one of the co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous: sobriety, freedom from alcohol, through the teaching and practice of the 12 steps is the sole purpose of any Alcoholics Anonymous group.
So how did we get to this point? We didn't just open the page randomly or open the book randomly and say, let's read page 10. This is a 96-week study, and we're in our 5th year as a group, but in our 4th season, or our 4th time in going through the book. And we read everything from the title page all the way through page 164 in this question and answer format that we'll be doing in a little while. We read each page line by line so we can get that better understanding of what it is this book has to share with us and has to tell us. Throughout the study, there's 3 times where the asterisk at the bottom of the page says, go and read the spiritual experience, appendix 2, and we do that. And then when we get to the end of page 164, we also read Dr. Bob's Nightmare. We spend a few weeks on the traditions, and then we close out with week 96 with a standalone week of the spiritual experience, because the spirituality is such a vital, important piece of our program. And then after we finish that, we cycle all the way back to the beginning and we do it all over again.
That's
so
the way
I'll
we
keep
do
coming
it.
And keep learning.
Before we start our recap, we will need 5 or 6 virtual hands raised if you would like to be one of our answer readers. Please be aware that the first hour and a half of this meeting is recorded so that we can put it onto our website and our YouTube channel. And just for confirmation, folks, it's recorded in audio only. So if you're afraid somebody's going to recognize your voice, speak in French, I don't care. However it works for you. So, that being said, Susan, welcome with our recap from last week.
Hey everybody, my name is Susan. I am an alcoholic, and renewing my resolve, I tried again. Some time passed and confidence began to be replaced by cocksureness. I could laugh at the gin mills. Now I had what it takes. One day I walked into a cafe to telephone. In no time I was beating on the bar, asking myself how it happened. As the whiskey rose to my head, I told myself I would manage better next time, but I might as well get good and drunk then, and I did. The remorse, horror, and hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. The courage to do battle was not there. My brain raced uncontrollably, and there was a terrible sense of impending calamity. I hardly dare cross the street lest I collapse and be run down by an early morning truck, for it was scarcely daylight. An all-night place supplied me with a dozen glasses of ale. My writhing nerves were stilled at last. A morning paper told me the market had gone to hell again. Well, so had I. The market would recover, but I wouldn't. That was a hard thought. Should I kill myself? No, not now. Then a mental fog settled down. Gin would fix that. So 2 bottles and oblivion. The mind and body are marvelous mechanisms. For mine endured this agony 2 more years. Sometimes I stole from my wife's slender purse when the morning terror and madness were on me. Again I swayed dizzily before an open window or the medicine cabinet where there was poison, cursing myself for a weakling. There were flights from city to country and back as my wife and I sought escape. Then came the night when the physical and mental torture was so hellish I feared I would burst through my window, sash and all. Somehow I managed to drag my mattress to a lower floor, lest I suddenly leap. The doctor came with a heavy sedative. Next they found me drinking both gin and sedative. This combination soon landed me on the rocks. People feared for my sanity. So did I. I could eat little or nothing when drinking, and I was 40 pounds underweight. My brother-in-law was a physician, and through his kindness and that of my mother, I was placed in a nationally known hospital for the mental and physical rehabilitation of alcoholics. Under the so-called belladonna treatment, my brain cleared. Hydrotherapy and mild exercise helped much. Best of all, I met a kind doctor to explain that though certainly selfish and foolish, I had been seriously ill, bodily and mentally. It relieved me somewhat to learn that in alcoholics the will is amazingly weakened when it comes to combating liquor, though it often remains strong in other respects. My incredible behavior in the face of a desperate desire to stop was explained. Understanding myself now, I fared forth in high hope. For 3 or 4 months the goose hung high. I went to town regularly and even made a little money. Surely this was the answer, self-knowledge. But it was not, for the frightful day came when I drank once more. The curve of my declining moral and bodily health fell off like a ski jump. After a time I returned to the hospital. This was the finish, the curtain, it seemed to me. My weary and despairing wife was informed that it would all end with heart failure during delirium tremens, or I would develop a wet brain perhaps within a year. She would soon have to give me over to the undertaker or the asylum. They did not need to tell me. I knew and almost welcomed the idea. It was a devastating blow to my pride. I, who had thought so well of myself and my abilities, of my capacity to surmount obstacles, was cornered at last. Now I was to plunge into the dark, joining that endless procession of sots who had gone on before. I thought of my poor wife. There had been much happiness after all. What would I not give to make amends? But that was over now. No words can tell of the loneliness and despair I found in that bitter morass of self-pity. Quicksand stretched all around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master.
Thank you so much, Susan, for being of service today. We definitely appreciate you. And now Donald is going to come in with tonight's study portion. And folks, this is right where we'll come back to when we start asking questions.
Donald Alcoholic. Trembling, I stepped from the hospital a broken man. Fear sobered me for a bit. Then came the insidious insanity of that first drink. And on Armistice Day, 1934, I was off again. Everyone became resigned to the certainty that I would have to be shut up somewhere, or would stumble along to a miserable end. How dark it was before the dawn. In reality, that beginning was my last debauch. It was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as times passed. Near the end of that bleak November, I sat drinking in my kitchen. With a certain satisfaction, I reflected where there was enough gin concealed about the house to carry me through that night and the next day. My wife was at work. I wondered whether I dared hide a full bottle of gin near the head of our bed. I would need it before daylight. My musing was interrupted by the telephone. The cheery voice of an old school friend asked if he might come over. He was sober. It was years since I could remember his coming to New York in that condition. I was amazed. Rumor had it that he had been committed for alcoholic insanity. I wondered how he escaped. Of course, he would have dinner, and then I could drink openly with him, unmindful of his welfare. I thought only of recapturing the spirit of other days. There was that time we had chartered an airplane to complete a jag. His coming was an oasis in this dreary desert of futility. The very thing, an oasis. Drinkers are like that. The door opened and he stood there, fresh-skinned and glowing. There was something about his eyes. He was inexplicably different. What had happened? I pushed a drink across the table. He refused it. Disappointed but curious, I wondered what had got into the fellow. He wasn't himself. Come, what's this all about? I queried. He looked straight at me. Simply but smiling, he said, I've got religion. I was aghast. So that was it. Last summer, an alcoholic crackpot, now, I suspected, a little cracked about religion. He had the starry-eyed look. Yes, the old boy was on fire all right, but bless his heart, let him rant. Besides, my gin would last longer than his preaching. But he did no ranting. In a matter-of-fact way, he told me how two men had appeared in court persuading the judge to suspend his commitment. They had told of a simple religious idea and a practical program of action. That was 2 months ago, and the result was self-evident. It worked. He had come to pass his experience along to me, if I cared to have it. I was shocked, but interested. Certainly, I was interested. I had to be, for I was hopeless.
Excuse me. Thank you so much, Donald, for your service tonight. And now, folks, we will go right back to where Donald began the reading. And Trish will also have several comments that she will be coming in with tonight. And our batting order tonight for readers is going to be Rick, Jim, Kenny, Art, Sheila, and Linda. Thank you all for stepping up for service tonight. So you can all unmute, and that'll help make things go with a little better flow. Just remember, if you decide to play the bongos while you're unmuted, everybody will hear you play the bongos. So we are going to kick it off with the fireman. Welcome, Rick. Good to have you, brother. Your question is, how did Bill leave Towns Hospital the second time?
We're at the bottom, correct?
It starts on page 8. Trembling, I stepped.
Okay. Trembling, I stepped from the hospital, a broken man.
Thank you very much. And Jim, coming to you, sir. What kept him from taking the first drink?
Fear sobered me for a bit.
Thank you. Kenny, a two-part question for you, sir. A, what caused Bill to start drinking again? And B, when did it fail him?
Then came the insidious insanity of the first drink on an Armistice Day, 1934.
Thank you.
I was off
Nope,
again.
that's it. Oh, yep, you're right. I'm sorry. Thank you.
In my first two comments, the first is, do you recognize the insanity of taking the first drink? This is what defines the alcoholic mind and is the source of the unmanageability of chronic alcoholism. And a second, Armistice Day is now celebrated as Veterans Day. Edward Page II proposed a bill that would change Armistice Day to Veterans Day in 1954.
Good to know. And Art, coming to you, my friend. What was everyone's prognosis for Bill?
Everyone became resigned to the certainty that I would have to be shut up somewhere or would stumble along to a miserable end.
Thank you. And Miss Sheila, welcome, coming to you. Your question is, in reality, what was the last drunk for Bill to be? 2 sentences, please.
How dark it is before the dawn. In reality, that was the beginning of my last debauch.
Thank you very much. And Miss Linda, welcome. What was too soon happened to Bill?
Let me turn up my sound. I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence.
Thank you. And Rick, coming right back to you, my friend. What was it he would come to know?
I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes.
Thank you.
Carefully study this paragraph. Look at how it begins, hopeless. Look at how it ends, happy, joyous, and free. This paragraph exemplifies the simplicity of the program, the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Thank you, Trish. And Jim, coming right back to you. What was Bill doing around the end of November 1934?
Near the end of that bleak November, I sat drinking in my kitchen.
Thank you. And Mr. Kenny, what caused the sense of satisfaction Bill was experiencing?
With a certain satisfaction, I reflected there was enough gin concealed about the house to carry me through the night and the next day.
Did you feel secure when you knew you had alcohol hidden in secret places?
Art, question coming to you, sir. Where was Bill thinking of hiding a bottle? 2 sentences, please.
My wife was at work. I wondered whether I dared hide a full bottle of gin near the bed, near the head of our bed.
Thank you.
Have you ever hidden alcohol near or under the bed? Do normal drinkers hide alcohol?
And Sheila, your question is, why did he feel it necessary to have a bottle under his bed? Starting with I would.
I wouldn't need it before daylight.
Have you ever had to take a few drinks during the night, hopeful, so to be able to get back to sleep?
Miss Linda, what interrupted Bill's daydreaming?
To me?
Yes. You just muted yourself too.
And she's saying go on.
Okay. Okay. So, Rick, coming back to you. What interrupted Bill's daydreaming?
My musing was interrupted by the telephone.
Okay, Jim, 2-part question. Whose voice did Bill hear? What did Ebby want to do?
The cheery voice of an old school friend asked if he might come over.
The voice was that of Ebby T., Bill's longtime friend, who is known to have a serious drinking problem.
And Kenny, what condition was Ebby in? 2 sentences, please.
He was sober. It was years since I could remember his coming to New York in that condition.
Thank you. And Art, how did this affect Bill?
I was amazed.
And Sheila, what rumor had Bill heard regarding Ebby?
Rumor had it that he had been committed for alcoholic insanity.
Thank you. And Linda, if you're ready, you can unmute. Where were Bill's thoughts about Ebby? What were Bill's thoughts about Ebby? Read the whole paragraph.
I'm sorry, what page? Had to get support. What page is it?
Hang on, let me find page 9. Okay, let me say it, everybody. Starting with, I wondered how he had escaped. Read the whole paragraph.
I wondered how he had escaped. Of course he would have dinner, and then I could drink openly with him. Unmindful of his welfare, I thought only of recapturing the spirit of other days. There was that time we had chartered an airplane to complete a jag. His coming wasn't an oasis in this dreary desert of futility, the very thing an oasis drinker are like that.
Thank you. And Rick, coming back to you. When Bill welcomed Ebby at the door, what did Bill see? 3 sentences.
The door opened and he stood there, fresh-skinned and glowing. There was something about his eyes. He was inexplicably different. What had happened?
Okay, you took the second question, but that's okay.
Oh,
We'll take that to Jim. Jim, what did Bill wonder?
What had happened?
Yep, there you go. Kenny, what did Bill do?
I put the drink across the table.
Thank you. Art, what did Ebby do?
He refused it.
Thank you. And Sheila, how did this hit Bill? 2 sentences, please.
Disappointed but curious, I wondered what had got into the fellow. He wasn't himself.
Thank you. And Miss Linda, and you're still muted. What did Bill ask Ebby?
Come on. What's all this about?
What? One more.
I queried.
Yep. Thank you. And Rick, coming back to you, what was Ebby's answer, and in what manner did he give Bill the answer? 2 sentences, please.
He looked straight at me, simply but smilingly. He said, "I've got religion."
Thank you. Jim, how did that strike Bill?
I was aghast.
Thank you. And Kenny, what did Bill suspect about his old friend?
So that was it. Last summer, an alcoholic crackpot. Now I suspect a little cracked about religion.
And Sheila, what did Bill notice about Ebby? 2 sentences, please.
He had that starry-eyed look. Yes, the old boy was on fire, all right.
Thank you. And Miss Linda, what did Bill decide to do?
Would it be at yes?
No, it's but bless.
Oh, but bless his heart. Let him rant.
Thank you. And Rick, coming back to you. What didn't he mind if Ebby wanted to do a little preaching?
Besides, my gin will last longer than his preaching.
Thank you. And Jim, what did Ebby tell Bill? 2 sentences, please.
But he did no ranting. In a matter-of-fact way, he told how 2 men had appeared in court, persuading the judge to suspend his commitment.
Thank you. And Kenny, what had these 2 men told Ebby?
They had told of a simple religious idea and a practical program of action.
Thank you. And Art, how long had Ebby been sober?
That was 2 months ago, and the result was self-evident.
We must wonder where the idea came from that an alcoholic should be sober a number of months or years before they make 12-step calls. It certainly is not supported by anything in the Big Book.
Thank you, Trish. And Miss Sheila, what did Ebby's 2 months prove to Bill?
It worked.
Yes, indeed.
If Bill had not known how bad Ebby's drinking problem had been, would Bill have given any serious thought to what Ebby had to say?
And Miss Linda, why had Ebby called on Bill?
It had come to pass his experience along to me, if I cared to have it.
Thank you. And Rick, coming back to you, sir. Was Bill interested in what Ebby had to share? 2 sentences, please.
I was shocked but interested. Certainly I was interested.
Thank you. And Mr. Jim, you get the final question of the night. And it is, why would Bill be interested?
I had to be, for I was hopeless.
Thank you so much. And everybody can remute and feel free to raise your hands, folks, because the meeting is now open for questions, observations, experience, spiritual experience with this work. And we would love to hear from you. It's going to be the dental chair tonight. Come on in, Sheila.
She's an alcoholic.
Hi, welcome.
I love this part of the story so much. Oh, I love everything in this book, but yeah, I started off with his fear and that I was off again, and everyone was certain that I would have to be shut up somewhere, and he kind of lost everything, and that was me too. How dark it is before the dawn, that blackness, and then and then it says, I was to know peace and happiness and usefulness. And I wrote in the margin, don't leave until a miracle happens, because I stuck around 9 years ago when I came in. I went to meetings every day. I still do for 9 years. It's not a once a week thing for me. It's every day, every 24 hours. It's a new start for me. And it's such a blessing. And then, his alcohol was his master. He was the denizen, the servant of alcohol, and how frustrating. And I remember my alcohol, how important it is to me. I mean, my life was run by alcoholic minutes. I was a teacher for 40 years in the public school system, and I looked at that clock all day, waiting for it to tick, 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 tick. I wasn't putting I was putting like a minuscule amount of my energy into those kids, and I was still a good teacher, and I did love what I was doing, but I just wasn't reaching any potential because my mind was never fully there. It was get into my pickup truck. I had horses. I lived on a ranch, and just get that cooler as soon as I got off school property, until 2 a.m. And then same thing next day. But the alcoholic minutes, and I always made sure I was stocked up. I didn't have to hide the bottles because I never committed to anyone, so I could drink. And I just remember, once we had a hurricane. Well, we had several hurricanes. This is in Homestead, Florida. We had Andrew. And I remember I had a really bad hangover. I think the night before Andrew, we had a big Andrew party, and I said, "This is it. I got to get through this hurricane, and when it's over, and I've got to function." So I remember putting drove to a gas station about 2 miles away, and I dumped my alcohol in a dumpster. The only time I ever did that in 50 years of drinking. And the next day, we had a horrible hurricane. If you guys ever heard of Andrew, it was like a nuclear holocaust. And I remember that next day getting up, and I actually walked to that dumpster because I couldn't drive because of the trees. And I got into the dumpster, and I found the bottle I had thrown in the day before. And I mean, I was that insane. So. Yeah, when the seed for me was planted, and it was a 12-step, but not a 12-step call. A friend of mine came to me one day and said, "You're dying. I don't want to watch you die. Please try to go to this meeting." And I did. I went 2 days later, and I didn't drink from that day on. It wasn't magic. I had horrible cravings and obsessions up until for about the first several months, but I did work the steps, and I knew what to do when I had those cravings. I had my tools. I had my sponsor. I had my service within 2 months, and I was doing 12-step calls within 3 months also. So yeah, I could go on, but I found God, and like Abby did, it talks about the darkness in his eyes. If you ever take a picture of yourself before and then take a picture of yourself after. When we first come in, we could see it in the newcomers. There's this darkness, and then 3 months later, 2 months, 5 months, whatever, there's a light, and it's almost like this inner glow. So, yeah, this program is divinely inspired, and I'm absolutely astounded by its beauty. So, thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Sheila. Michael, you had your hand up, brother, but it dropped. Do you want to come in?
Okay, there, I did it. Technology. Two things. I read that part after on page 9, the bottom of page 9. It was 2 months ago, and the result was self-evident. Okay, and then said something about it doesn't say in the book that we have to go over a length time or whatever before we start to, I guess, reach out to other alcoholics. And then on the other page, I was just reading where Bill says I'm using was interrupted by telephone call. A true voice and an old school friend asked if he might come over. And my thing was this: what prompted Debbie to reach out to Bill after 2 months? Because when I remember getting sober, and I wasn't thinking about trying to go and help the alcoholic. I was thinking about, will I to make amends, or there's some things I've screwed up. I need to go back and say I'm sorry for, that kind of thing. That was along the lines of my thing. But after 2 months, here we have Abby reaching out to Bill on a 12-step call. I'm knowing coming over and talking to him about what happened at 2 months. That's all. I'm throwing it out there. If got any wisdom on that, I just like to hear anybody that's got something to say about that. That's it.
Thank you, brother. I'll have the answer for you in a bit, unless Rick has it now. Come on in, Rick. Welcome. Good to see you, fireman.
I'll try. I don't know if I got answers. Rick, alcoholic. Hello, everyone. Great to be here. I take it to that. I admit that I'm just looking where I wanted to share from. But that last question there, I'm thinking that Abby at 2 months was in a spot like Bill Wilson was when he was in that hotel lobby. He knew he had to call somebody, and Abby knew of Bill Wilson, saying, well, this guy's a drunk, let me go study, and I'll bet you he's drunk, and I need to talk to somebody because I feel like picking up. That could be the answer. I don't know. That's just my side. But trembling, I stepped from the hospital, a broken man. The first detox and rehab, I remember being there and being okay that I was there. I was okay. But deep down inside, I knew I wasn't done. I said, okay, you know what happens when you drink too much. You're just not going to drink like that anymore. That's who I was. And I firmly believed that would work. I firmly believed that would work. And I stayed sober for a while, but I did the other side dishes, as I heard somebody mention not long ago, for a bit. And so that's not true sobriety. And then came the day, not an Armistice Day, but got invited to go to a NASCAR race in New Hampshire, and I said, look at this, There's no way I would have spent that day turning down beers. As soon as I made it there, man, I knew. And right away I drank, went home drunk and told my wife, well, I'll only drink at the sporting events, I'll be all right, and she didn't believe it, but she walked away. But last two detoxes, I remember being there and saying to myself, when are you going to learn to do it, to quit drinking the way you do? You can't drink like this. This is where you end up. You have to manage your drinking. Now, this is as I'm in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. All this is here. All this is not being taken in by Rick. Rick wasn't done at the time. Knowing and believing that if I were to drink like the friends I have today, who would drink with me, Some didn't after a while, but the ones who drank with me, today they are retired. And every single one of them sons of guns can open up a beer and be done with it or not even finish it. They just don't drink the way they did before. They have an excuse, they're older, they're grandpas now, just like I am. It's just something that they do not do. And I wanted that in the worst way. And of course, ended up torturing myself more trying to do it the way they do it. And I believe today that I know I can't even touch it. You talk about your little thimble there, and I believe that's all it takes for alcoholics like us. So today I'm very grateful for the way today, the bottle was never my friend. I hear people say that was my best friend. I had to break up with my best friend. A best friend that just didn't treat me right at all towards the end, but yet I still tried to hang with that friend. So today I hang in the rooms, I hang in this stuff, I hang because it works. It's like it says in that promise on page 88, line 8, like Alyssa has never a name now. But yeah, and then I was to know a new happiness and peace, usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. That's his promise. That's one of his promises here. So, thank you.
Thank you, brother. And welcome, Kitty. I just posted in the chat the pages that we read tonight. Trish, welcome. Come on in. You are most welcome, Kitty. Good to see you.
Hey everybody, I'm Trish and I'm an alcoholic. And, I remember those days of trembling. Feeling like I was so broken and empty and didn't know if I had the energy or the desire to put one foot in front of the other. And then that next line where we started reading, fear sobered me a bit. Fear was my main motivator. Fear would make me drink because I didn't want to do whatever was coming up. I didn't want to deal with the feelings, but fear would also get me to stop drinking because of something. Didn't want to deal with whatever the repercussions or the consequences of drinking were, so I'd stop for a while. So fear would get me to start, fear would get me to stop, fear would get me to go to bed because I just had to pull the covers over my head and hide for a while. Fear would get me up because I had things to do. It was all fear, even through years of sobriety. But then that line of how dark it is before the dawn, and that comment that I had of, look at how this paragraph begins with the hopelessness and it ends with the happy, joyous, and free. When I was finally able to resign myself to the fact that I was an alcoholic and maybe I should try AA. And I could admit that for a while. I couldn't accept being an alcoholic. But I walked into the rooms just to see what would happen, and I knew I was home. I felt that peace walking into the room. I could see the happiness in everybody's faces. I knew the lights were on and somebody was home. And I wanted what you guys had. I wasn't quite willing at that point to do what you had, to do what you did to get what you had, but I wanted what you had. But the conversations that I had with people in early sobriety and thinking, I could never do this, I could never share this with somebody else. But I was so wrong. There was plenty of things that I could say to new people with less time than I did. Even if it was just to say, hey, I did this. I didn't drink for today. Because I see people coming in the rooms now, and I know they can relate to somebody with 1 week or 1 month a whole lot better than they can relate to somebody with decades. Because to tell them I have 40 years of sobriety, they're going to look at me and say, you're full of crap. Nobody can ever do that, but they're going to be able to relate to the newcomer, and I couldn't understand that in the beginning. But, you know, and I think back to the friend of mine who spent hours and hours with me sharing her story. And then that comment, if Bill hadn't known how bad Ebby's drinking, would he have given any serious thought to what Ebby had to say? And it was the same thing. If I hadn't known Chris's story, if I didn't know the way she drank and what she was sharing with me, I wouldn't have listened to her. Because I would have told her, you don't know what you're talking about. And now today, when I share with other people, I can do that same thing. I can share my story. I can share my experience with them so that they can understand that I can relate too. And once they know I can relate to where they are and what they're doing, then maybe they can grab onto that hope that they can get sober too. Thanks.
Thank you, Trish. And Gandalf, come on in. Welcome, brother.
Welcome, thank you very much, Donald, aka Gandalf the Red Pickle. Grateful, recovered, but not cured alcoholic. Thank you very much for this study and everything. So, you know, and I want to comment a little bit about, there was something about his eyes. Whenever you can actually look at a person and see a difference in the countenance of that person, makes you, you know, and if it's something that you're lacking or yearning for, you know, it's something that you do get interested in. You start listening a little bit differently. And, you know, even though he was 2 months sober, you know, like it says in our promises, if we are painstaking about this phase of our development, you know, we will be amazed before we're halfway through. And one of the things that we need to do whenever we're in that predicament or whatever is service with another alcoholic. And I think that's why Ebby Thatcher went to see Bill that night, because he might have been told by his sponsor or somebody that, you know, you need to tell this to somebody else. You need to tell this to an alcoholic who's still suffering. And, you know, I'm so glad that he did. You know, with everything that, you know, I've been learning about this program, the history of it, the more interesting it becomes. You know, going back to 1840, you know, with the Washingtonians and stuff, you know, it's amazing how the same principles were, you know, used back then, but stuff happened. You know, we had wars, we had, you know, internal conflicts going on. We had the gold rush, you know, and it's just, if Bill would have been alive back then, it probably wouldn't have taken off, you know. But I'm so glad it did when it did, and I was able to benefit from it. So that's about all I've got for today. God bless you guys, and thank you for being family.
Thank you, Donald. Glad you're here, brother. There is plenty of time, folks. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, I'll go ahead and jump in here for a minute. Hi, family. My name's Jamie, very grateful, recovered alcoholic. And Bill's story is a classic 12-step call by Bill himself. And to Michael's question first, why, how? Maybe only God knows the reason for that. But here's what I believe. Ebby knew that Bill drank like he did, and Ebby had found hope through those two men that appeared when he was about to be convicted and locked up. So here's Ebby sitting across the table from him, clear-eyed, fresh-faced, and Bill is 40 pounds underweight and dying, and literally dying from this disease. I believe everything happens in God's perfect timing. They say when the When the student is ready, the teacher will appear, but oftentimes when the teacher is ready, the student will appear. This also it brings in the idea that if you're newly sober, and when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, they said, even if you're just 1 or 2 days sober, you have a message to carry to the person who's still coming in and still shaking and baking and can't put down the drink, or the person who's only sober for a few hours. I'm going to go with this for just a second. I've been to a few conventions in my time in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I love the countdown. And I can remember one countdown going from decades of sobriety down to the first hour of sobriety for someone. That's a big deal. And for most people like that, it becomes a spiritual experience, which I think is very cool. To myself and to my own personal story, I didn't step from the hospital a broken man. I crawled out of bed when I finally could and stepped back into the bar a broken man. And my intention was to drink enough to drive off the mountain. But my mom was sober almost 17 years at the time. And as I just thought about this tonight, she spent 17 years 12-stepping me. I didn't want anything to do with the pamphlets, didn't want to hear about any of it, went to a couple of meetings when I was desperate, but I wasn't desperate enough. And then my turn came. My day came on September 3rd, 1990, and it was my turn to hear the message, because we don't hear the message until we're ready. If my mother were still alive tomorrow, she would have been 52 years sober. And that's amazing, and that's how long I've been around Alcoholics Anonymous, but not in Alcoholics Anonymous. I've only been here for 35 years as an active participant. There is so much in this, just in these couple of pages that we read tonight, but the thing that really, really struck me the most was that the dark before the dawn. I don't see it here right at the moment, but the dark before the dawn, and yet I was to go on to live a life of usefulness and purpose and happiness. And I can tell you that that's the kind of life that I live today. It doesn't mean that I have immunity from outside issues and from outside problems in life, but the program of Alcoholics Anonymous has given me a set of spiritual tools that are so spiritual in nature that I can deal with absolutely any problem in my life through the process of the steps, because every problem in my life is rooted in spiritual malady. So if I apply the spiritual solution in our book not just to the alcoholism, but I apply it to every aspect of my life, I begin to straighten out mentally and physically. Are there things like I have to go to the doctor? Sure. But if I was drinking, would I be going to the doctor? No, I'd be going to the liquor store. And I'll touch on this real quick. The Washingtonians failed, as Kenny had pointed out earlier, because they got involved in things other than alcoholism. And there was two things about the Washingtonians. They were only a fellowship that talked. They did not have a spiritual program of recovery. And they did not have traditions to keep them glued together. And that's the beautiful thing about the traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. Chapter 3 tells us what we are in our alcoholism. Chapter 5 tells us what we can do about what we are. And the traditions are the glue that binds it all together. And yet it was all born and given birth to in 1934. Bill checked into that hospital for the last time. And on his third day in the hospital, he took his third step. On the fourth and fifth day, Ebby came to help him out with the rest of the steps. And here we are. We're not here because of the meetings that Bill attended. Why? Because there were no meetings. We're here because of the steps that Bill took, and I apologize for going over. Linda, come on in.
Hi, my name is Linda. Thank you. I apologize. I have a very bad cold. Thank you so much for what everyone shared. And that part, was asking questions. Did you ever do this? Did you ever do that? Did you ever? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. When I had bottles, I would put paper in between them so they wouldn't clink. So when I put them in the trash, no one would know that they were a bunch of bottles. And they were beer bottles, they were liquor bottles, I didn't want anyone to know, but everyone knew. Aunt Ed knew. They knew I was an alcoholic before me once they knocked on my door to tell me that they were going to turn my lights on. So I was in a denial, as they say. And I like this part because it's a spiritual awakening for Bill. He's sarcastic. My gin will last longer than his preaching. The sarcasm of an alcoholic. But after a while, he understood, it's working for him. This man had struggled with alcohol and this and that, and he stopped and he listened because he was at that point of desperation. He hit his bottom. He hit his bottom. It was like, I know that I have to stop. This is it. This is, like they say, the last round in the bar. He knew this was the last round. So he did listen, and as he told him that he got religion, it wasn't really the religion that he got. It was the spiritual aspect. It was this, I don't know what you could call it, but to me it's just this merciful, of God just picking him up, and getting him sober. And for me, I always think that, that I reached my bottom, and once I surrender, and once I allow God to come in, the sobriety came in. But so long as I was fighting by doing my own will, by trying to control it, by drinking a different kind of liquor, hanging around different kind of people, drinking at different times, all the typical things we do as an alcoholic. So long as I thought that I could control it, no, I was going to stay drunk and miserable and in trouble, and in desperation. But once I stopped and I let God in, and it was an epiphany like that white lightning, and that was it. I'm not going to say it was all easy, no. But guess what? I got sober. And I can understand that now. I can look back on that and I can understand it now. That once I said, I surrender, I can't do this no more. I laid on my bed saying I felt like I was dying. I was like, God, I feel like I'm dying. Help me, help me. And God heard me, and he did. He or she, God did. And I always say this, God is merciful. He gives us second and third and fourth and fifth and sixth, 7 chances, And I know he did because I didn't get it when I first came in. I relapsed. But I had to hit a bottom with that. And then once I was finally done, that was it. And I felt very happy being sober. I really did. Sometimes I would feel lonely. Sometimes I went through depression in AA. But it's like I knew a drink would never make it better. It would never make it better. And I just didn't want to go back to that pain and that suffering. And then as I stayed in recovery, I saw what happened to people that drank. And it's like, I don't want to go to anybody's funeral that drank. I had a sponsee that drank. She went back to the old friends. I told her no. She didn't listen. Young Italian girl. Young, 32, 33 years old. And she said, I just want to stay sober, And she told me she was a habitual relapser. But once she went around those people, that was it. And she overdosed and they left her there. Yeah, they called the ambulance, but they left her there. That's horrible. What kind of friends is that? And she didn't make it. Her family had to take off life support. And I was like, this is crazy. And I had to hear it from someone else. I said, why is she not calling me? Why is she not connecting with me on Facebook? I don't see in the meetings what's going on. One person, oh, you didn't know? I was shocked. And that hit me really bad. It really hit me bad. But this is what the disease does, Never overestimate your recovery. Never underestimate your disease. And that's why they tell us don't go around people, places, and things. They are deadly, you know. They'll get me drunk before I get them sober. And she talked about she's just going to watch. That's insane. That is insane. You know, one guy told me at 7 years of sobriety, he go into the liquor store buying liquor for people. Oh, he don't drink. Let's send him to the liquor store. First thing, he had no business in a liquor store. Second of all, he had no business around those old friends. And eventually he drank. And he shared about it in the rooms. So I just can't try to play with this disease. You know, I'm going to trick this disease. I'm going to trick everyone else. I'm not tricking anyone. I'm not fooling anyone. I'm not putting it over on anyone. I'm putting it over on myself. I'm fooling myself. You know, and that's all the denial. So I'm just grateful to be sober. And I like this part because what I'm sharing about, it makes me think about that. It makes me think about that, you know, and the sarcasm, you know. Like you know, it's still that bit of denial, you know, and rebelliousness. Thank you for letting me share. And I apologize. I have a bad cold.
Thank you, Linda. Glad you're here. And Art, welcome, my friend. Come on in.
Hello everyone, my name is Art. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. And what I was impressed with on this particular portion of this chapter that we read tonight, how often have you heard people say, you can't talk to a drunk while they're drunk? You can't talk to people while they're drinking. Yet, when Abby came to see Bill, he was drinking. He had been drinking, who knows how long by the time he got there. My experience was that had not my sponsor been willing to come and talk to me when I was drunk, I wouldn't have come to AA when I did. And, you know, this may be a subtle point here, but because Bill doesn't actually talk about being intoxicated when the message was brought to him through Ebby. But he talks about his musings about what to do, that he had enough liquor in the house to carry him through the night and through the next day, and wondering about where he should hide it before his wife came home from work. That's a person who is at least partially intoxicated already. And yet, Abby was able to get through to him. So, when I hear people talking about, you know, saying things like, you can't talk to somebody when they're drunk, I beg to differ. My first official 12-step call, if you will, was a fellow that I'd been talking with for a few weeks, and he called me from a bar. He asked me to come and talk to him. And I did. And I didn't take anybody with me. So I broke all of the rules that are set up for doing 12-step calls. They tell you take somebody with you. They tell you you can't talk to them when they're drunk. They tell you all of that is nonsense in my mind. I went by myself because here was a fellow that I was trying to help that was reaching out, and I felt I needed to go. And I didn't have anybody to take with me, so I went anyway. And that's the lesson that I get from this portion of the book. It doesn't matter. We can bring this message to anybody at any time. And And the message is very simple. You don't have to continue with the life that you're living. There is a way to be free from the alcoholic prison. You know, the prison that I was in was of my own making and just in my mind, but I was a slave to alcohol. I couldn't break free from it. And anybody who is in that position, and Bill describes it very, very graphically and very well, that the darkest part of the night is just before dawn. And the hopelessness that he felt and the desperation. And I felt all those things. But I just, it struck me as we were reading that Abby didn't wait for Bill to sober up to tell him the news. And I don't think we have to wait for him to sober up either. So thank you.
Thank you, Art. Scuba Pickle, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Larry, and I'm an alcoholic. And I've always been a slow learner, it seems like, in this. But, you know, I have given away 2 families the first time when I finally came to an hopeless state and found Alcoholics Anonymous, came to a broken man, and it was then that I began this journey. And this journey has truly given me a life that I know now as happiness and peace, usefulness, and a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And I know that to be true, and I'm so thankful. But you know, as I started this journey, I can see, you know, I see similarities of how I was in the room. You know, I listened to the stories of people, and I wanted what they had. I really, you know, I wished that I could have what they had, but I wasn't willing fully to get and to do what was needed to get what they had. The one thing that my first sponsor taught me was to be of service, and that's the one thing that I did and tried to do faithfully for most of my my sober years after being an alcoholic, and probably that has saved me from drinking these last 15 years. But for the first 7 years, I was stubborn. You know, people would talk about how great things are, but when they talk about religion, man, I would have ideals. I can sit here and I could pick apart why that wasn't for me and why it couldn't happen for me and why I couldn't do this and why I couldn't do that and why religion and church and everything else, all the things that I was different than what this program was made for. And you know, and therefore, there was a whole lot that I didn't have that this program could have offered me through those 7 years. It offered me much, but it couldn't offer me as much as it could have through those 7 years. And I was doing a lot of starving. And then I got resentment, and I quit going to meetings for a couple years, and that almost took me out, to the point that I phoned the cab to buy a bottle of whiskey so that I could drink the whiskey so that I would have enough nerve to kill myself. It had gotten that bad. And then I was interrupted by a phone call. And that's the point of this that I remember. I was interrupted by a phone call, and it was my daughter. And my daughter hadn't called me in probably 6 months. I hadn't talked with my daughter. But she called me that night, and she said, "Dad, you are coming home. You are coming to Dayton. We have gotten you an apartment, and we are coming to move you tomorrow." And out of the blue, that spoiled all plans of me killing myself. Now, my daughter is not in the program, so it wasn't AA coming, but I know that that was God speaking to me. The program was still involved in me coming. And I again, when I got to Dayton, I again got into AA. And today, through service and through the work, and by getting honest and doing the program right, I have a life full of happiness, peace, usefulness, and a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes on. That's all I got.
Thank you, Larry. I just want to touch on a couple of quick things that Art had touched on before we close out, and that Larry had touched on first. So I'll touch on what Larry had to say first. In the foreword to the second edition, it tells us that Alcoholics Anonymous is not a religious organization. And on page 87, it tells us to be quick to see where religious people are right, because they know how to be helpful. And that's in step 11. So by the time I go through the process of taking the steps, hopefully I have found some open-mindedness in my heart. And if I get to step 11 and I haven't found that relationship with that power greater than myself yet. To Art's point of things that people say we shouldn't do, like go on 12-step calls by ourselves and so on and so forth, ain't none of that in the book. And to be quite honest, there are people in Alcoholics Anonymous, God bless them, while they might have good intentions, give really, really bad advice. And oftentimes I believe that bad advice is born out of their own fears and unresolved issues that they haven't taken care of yet. How do we take care of them? Through the process of sobriety. I can go anywhere today and have immunity from that first drink if I am spiritually fit. Abby's 2 months sober. Bill's 5 months sober when he carries a message to Dr. Bob. Bill worked with 96 alcoholics and not one of them stayed sober, but he did. And I'll bet many of those alcoholics were drinking while Bill was trying to work with them. And at 24 hours of sobriety, Dr. Bob and Bill went together to the hospital to see Bill D, AA number 3. At 24 hours sober, Dr. Bob was carrying the message of understanding of our threefold disease. Steps hadn't even been developed yet. So, it really is quite amazing. So, I guess what I'm trying to say with that, one of the things I have listened or learned to do is to ask my God for discernment between good information and bad information. And I know the people who give out good information, who do things that are in alignment with the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, are the ones that I want to follow. If you're not sure how to work with somebody else, the chapter Working with Others gives us the guidelines of how to work with somebody else. Bill, or Ebby, 12-stepping Bill and Dr. Bob, and Bill D are the guidelines. Art, come on back in.
Yeah, I just want to real quickly back up some of the things that you were saying. Once I took the first step, I didn't have to drink anymore, and I was so firm in that belief that it didn't matter that I went to a bar to see somebody. It didn't matter that somebody that I'm talking to might be drunk already. That wasn't part of the equation. It didn't matter, because I became firm in my own belief that I had taken my last drink. And that happened when I took the first step. That's all.
Thank you, Art. I appreciate you. You are one of those people that I have followed. Trish, you want to close us out? And we're going to close out, folks, but if you didn't share, or you want to stick around and talk, we have fellowship after the meeting, so please stick around.
That's from page 164 of our book. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then.
Thank you, Trish. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Thank you for your service and your commitment to this meeting. It is truly a joy and honor. We've got a really special way of closing out around here, because we can't circle up and hold hands like we do in a bricks and mortar meeting. We hold our hands up in the screen for those of you who wish, and it's our way of virtually connecting. And after a moment of silence for those who are sick and suffering, we will close out with the Lord's Prayer. I'll touch on this real quick. 263 alcoholics will die in this country today. 95,000 throughout the year, and 3 million worldwide. Thank God Bill Wilson didn't die. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be here. So after a moment of silence for those who are sick and suffering, please join me in the Lord's Prayer if you wish. Here's your moment. Thank you. Who will take us from shame to grace if we let him? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in the heavens. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Keep coming back.
Thank you, folks.
But only if you're working, so working because you're worth it.
Thanks, everybody.